Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here in a minute. We still have folks coming in, but we want to respect everyone's time. So we've got a little bit of a longer program, so folks can just come on in when they get a chance. My name is Michelle Conway. I'm the President and CEO of the Sedona Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau. Many of you know that I'm newer to my position. However, I've been with the Chamber for about 13 years. Been an Arizona native, lived in Sedona for a number of years, both as an adult and as a child. I'm just very honored to be in this capacity to serve in this role and to serve our community. I look forward to working with each of you. Our goal today is to provide factual information to really illustrate how each of the organizations that are speaking collaborate and work hard to address community issues. We hold the Community Pulse twice a year with speakers who are experts in their field. I'll open the program with a little bit about what the Chamber is currently working on. We will then hear from Brendan Foley from ADOT, Ed Rose with the Sedona Oak Creek Airport Authority, Matt Caldwell with Tread Lightly speaking to the progress made by the Red Rock OHV Conservation Crew, and finally our friends with the Red Rock Ranger District, Amy Tinderholt and Chris Johansson. We will take some questions at the end of every presentation, your speaker. We may limit it to, a few, just to make sure that we stay on schedule. There is a student event at 11:15 here, so we're going to need to probably start scooting out around 10:45. But if you do have questions that we don't get to right after the presentations, we will gladly connect with you afterwards if possible, or there will be the speaker's contact information at the end of this presentation, so you're more than welcome to reach out to us individually. So thank you to our presenters who are here with us today and to take time out of your busy day. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, APS, for helping us to put on today's event. Mackenzie apologizes for not being able to make it, but she did wish that I would share this message with you. At APS, our promise to our customers is that we will do what is right for the people and prosperity of the state, which is exactly why we support organizations like the Sedona Chamber and events like the Community Pulse that bring the community together to discuss opportunities to make the community that we live and work in better for everybody. I appreciate being part of the Chamber Board and such a vibrant community that is Sedona, and look forward to continuing to provide clean, affordable, and reliable energy to Sedona and the entire Verde Valley. On to our presentation. This is your Chamber of Commerce. The Sedona Chamber of Commerce is your Chamber of Commerce. We are deeply rooted in relationships, and our support of each other does not just stop at our office doors. It extends to our entire partnership, all of our partners within the city and the region, as well as our entire community. What you have with us is a caring and conscientious organization. We may not be perfect all the time, but we are always working hard. We are always learning and listening. We value your input along the way. You may have heard recently our organization being referred to as a 3C chamber. That is a catalyst, a convener, and a champion. I do see us still moving forward along that path. We don't want to step away from those three important functions of a chamber, but going down the path of truly being that 3C chamber is actually, and really walking that walk, it will take some time and require us to live up to a new set of expectations and standards that are going to be full of tough decisions and could require some course corrections from kind of where we've been in the past and where we want to go moving forward. So we do have some work to do, but the future is bright. Your chamber is in the community for the community. While all chambers are different in focus, one common thread of successful chambers is that they continue to step up to the greatest challenges in their city. The Sedona Chamber will continue to advocate on behalf of our hundreds of member businesses to ensure a positive business climate. We'll support our partners with promotional opportunities, professional development, networking, and more. We'll move forward programs that support destination stewardship and convene and collaborate with regional and community leaders on issues such as workforce, transportation, and housing. At the Chamber, we focus on the success of our partners as critical economic contributors and civic leaders. We are very, very proud to serve more than 730 member businesses. We celebrate Chamber partners who are the lifeblood of our community and economy. I encourage all of you to recognize these hardworking doers that our business community is comprised of. I like to think of them as dedicated risk takers who are supporting families and providing thousands of jobs. I also encourage all Sedona residents to prioritize locally owned businesses when it's time to buy. Shop local. That is one of the best ways we can make Sedona better. And while our businesses are resilient, they are not resistant to challenges. We have no shortage of challenges at this present time. I've heard from more businesses as of late, from hotels to restaurants to tour companies and retailers, that business in Sedona is down. This chart alone speaks to the traditional lodging sector in our area. You can see by the red line that represents this last fiscal year that we just completed that we've been down in our hotel business more months than we've been up during the past fiscal year, and that's in comparison to a pre-COVID fiscal year 19. I would like our business community to know that we hear you. We truly do. We will be working with the city to assess the downturn honestly and with an eye on our upcoming winter months, which are traditionally slower time of the year, as you can see from that dip in the November, January, February time period. So we'll be looking at that and what we might need to do to assist our businesses. In the meanwhile, what we can promise you is the best first place to start for our business support is your chamber membership benefits. You all will have a copy of this presentation with over 30 benefits listed. I encourage all of the members, partner members in the audience to take a look at the list, give us a call, and let's discuss ways to maximize your membership because we are here to help. Our robust benefits program consists of advocacy programs, educational events, signature programs, networking opportunities, member savings, and business exposure through a myriad of tools. Stay close to the Chamber for important updates throughout the year as we regularly evaluate our benefits to best serve our members. As you know, we also serve as the Sedona's official destination management organization. Given today's circumstances, we developed the goals that you see here that would drive this year's program of work. Following are just a few examples of that work that we're doing to address our community issues related more to the tourism side. Starting with our in-market visitor education, we have a number of ways to educate those visitors who are already here. One example that we will be doing or that we will be executing on is geofencing to message visitors about recreating responsibly, leaving no trace, and respecting Red Rock country while they are already here. Leveraging our powerful channels, visit Sedona.com, our annual guidebooks and social media. We will also be encouraging visitors to once again take the pledge and take the shuttle. So just leveraging those channels to make sure that we again educate and raise the bar on expectation of what we expect visitors to act or how to act. Publications where Sedona is already included and where those predisposed to visiting are reading will also include our message. This is just one example. We are working on this a little bit more to refine it per City Council's suggestion, but it will continue to be a message about respect and responsibility. We'll continue to partner with the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics and our newly launched Proud Supporter program, which permits usage of official branding assets to local businesses who wish to support Sedona's Leave No Trace content to their guests and customers. And we continue to share the Sedona Cares Pledge. This is just one tool in our toolbox that helps us to communicate what we expect from our visitors. Volunteerism is another program that we're working on this year. We're looking at developing a very extensive strategy and framework, starting with some research. Volunteerism is seeing more visitors give back to a destination as part of their travel experience. Our office has, in prior years, embraced this concept many times with working with organizations such as Oak Creek Watershed with their cleanups events, as well as encouraging local nonprofit organizations to develop volunteerism events that we could then support to our Sedona visitors by way of our online event calendar and social media, et cetera. So for the coming year, as I mentioned, we'll be contracting with Leave No Trace to develop a very thoughtful framework, which will be the first step to guide our efforts with greater intentionality. Building and maintaining strong relationships with the media, the meeting and event industry professionals is crucial to quicken the recovery of business travel that Sedona businesses highly value. Small meetings business is business we like because it's often held during midweek and off-peak periods. These people are generally busy at their meeting or their event during the day. They're not clogging up our roads. And meanwhile, they generate revenue in the evenings when they're enjoying their free time. So this is smart and managed business. This year, we'll also reinvigorate the Verde Shuttle program with bilingual videos, passenger guides, promotional flyers, digital information, and that'll all be disseminated to our lodging partners, who will then encourage their employees to use the shuttle as an easy way to get to and from work. This is an example of what we launched last year, and it reached a good level of success. So we're going to reinvigorate that program again, and this year we're going to actually add direct mailers to reach residents of the Cottonwood area directly. And then not last but not least, endorsement from residents from the Sedona Shuttle. We launched with great collaboration with the city. The Sedona Shuttle launched in March with a ribbon cutting. The chamber was contracted with the city to help brand and promote the service. A significant amount of materials were developed, all sorts of digital and print assets shared with our business community to encourage, again, their guests to get on the Sedona Shuttle. We've had some great success, seeing some amazing boarding numbers. And quite frankly, even with all the good work that's been done, it's things like this that really resonate and make us feel proud of collaborating with the city on it as the residents are being heard and helped. We continue to run the highly successful Sedona Trail Keepers program, where all of the funds go directly to trail maintenance and enhancement. And finally, we will be working with short-term rental managers and owners, bringing them into the business fold, where they will have access to our toolkits and professional materials that will assist them with educating their guests on our environmental preservation and sustainability needs. As I wrap up, I did want to state once again that we're here to listen. We want to hear from you. We've designed a number of events, both large and small, that you see listed here. And the whole intention of this largely is to ensure connection with our community and with everyone that is important to us. We want to make sure our connections and our communication remain strong. So please join us at any or all of these events. You can find more information at sedonachamberevents.com. Before I turn it over, are there any questions for me? We're going to, like I said, offer a small amount of Q&A after each presentation. Okay, great. Thank you very much for the time to kick us off here. Now I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Brendan Foley, North Central District Administrator for the Arizona Department of Transportation. Please help me welcome Brendan.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I want to thank the Chamber for the invitation and thank all of you for taking the time to be here. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk to you a little bit about ADOT's North Central District and some of the things we have going on and coming up. Again, my name is Brendan Foley. I'm the North Central District Administrator or District Engineer, as you may have potentially heard in the past. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about the district in general, kind of the size, what we do a little bit, some of the projects that we have going on locally here, and then some upcoming projects that we have coming in the future. So the North Central District is fairly large. We cover an area of about 23,000 square miles, which just for reference is roughly the size of the state of West Virginia. We cover 5 counties in Arizona, mostly Coconino County, but we also span portions of Mojave, Navajo, Yavapai, and Gila County. So we touch a lot of Arizona and impact a lot of northern Arizona. Just for reference again, we have just under about 2,800 lane miles of roadway in our district, which for reference, is roughly Los Angeles to New York. So we've got a lot of road to maintain and upkeep to keep everybody moving, keep tourism and everybody connected. We also coordinate our activities with a myriad of stakeholders throughout the region, about 40 stakeholders. That includes Chamber of Commerce, which we're here today on the behalf of, and the Forest Service, City of Sedona, City of Flagstaff, and myriad of other local municipalities and other stakeholders that are important to us. So some of the main things we have going on right now, which I'm sure most folks have noticed so far, are improvements along State Route 89A between Flagstaff and Sedona. We have 3 projects going on right now that we advertised as a package for one contractor to complete. The reason for this was just for efficiency and try and minimize the time frame and the footprint while we're here. So the first project we have is the Pump House Wash Bridge rehabilitation. That bridge is, a historic bridge, quite old. We're replacing the deck and barriers on that so that it'll be, safe and usable for at least 20 or 30 years into the future. We're also doing some work just to the north of that, our Oak Creek drainage and sediment control project. So as I'm sure a lot of folks know, we've had a lot of rain events that result in mud and rock slides and potentially closures of the roadway. So we're installing some infrastructure to help mitigate that and help also maintain the quality of Oak Creek by minimizing the sediment and runoff that gets into there. Then we've also got a rockfall mitigation project, a portion of which occurs at the north end there near Pump House Wash Bridge, and then a portion of which occurs at the south end here near just north of Sedona, just north of the new roundabout the city put in. So at the north end, with the work that we have going on there, few things to expect. I'm sure folks have noticed that we've got traffic down to a single lane through those 2 projects. We've got temporary barriers across the bridge, and we're controlling traffic with signals at either end of that so that we can, maintain the flow of traffic and provide a safe and efficient work zone for our contractor to get that work done. We also have some flaggers at either end. As everybody knows, it's a narrow roadway to begin with, and we further narrowed it, having to do the work on the bridge, so we can't have large vehicles in there. We've actually got that limited to 8 feet in width and 30 feet in length. So buses and RVs and vehicles, towing trailers and things like that are not going to be able to make it through the work zone on the bridge. So we've got flaggers to turn those folks around at appropriate areas and detour them elsewhere. Part of what we're doing in that location is allowing the contractor up to 10 full overnight closures so that to help facilitate both the bridge work and the rockfall and other sediment control work in that area. That'll let them get their crews in more quickly, get materials in there, and complete the work on that in an efficient manner without being impacted by traffic and without alternatively impacting traffic more. So, and we're not anticipating doing any of those closures on weekends or holidays. So down at the south end of the project, just north of Sedona and that new roundabout, we have some rockfall work that's going to be going on there. That is slated to occur next year, sometime between mid-May and late July currently. As we get a little bit closer to that, we'll firm up those dates with our contractor and disseminate that information to the public and make sure everybody's aware of what those dates are. And the reason for that is because we have 5 full daytime closures that the contractor is going to need to remove the rock at that location. We're going to be doing a little bit of blasting, controlled blasting to remove a rock shelf hanging up there 100 plus feet in the air. So obviously we don't want anybody getting hurt and anybody being impacted by that. So we'll have those closures. They'll be able to blast that, move the rock out of the site. And then they have some rock bolting work that they're going to be doing there as well to make sure that we stabilize those slopes and, keep them in an appropriate condition for years to come. So when we do have those closures, they're going to be generally 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. unless they finish early and are able to open up early. But we won't go past that. There's significant damages for the contractor for exceeding those timeframes. So we expect them to certainly comply with those. And again, we'll make sure everybody's aware. We'll have signed detours going up I-17 or down I-17, depending on where you're needing to go. That'll be in place during those closure times. So that's really about all on 89A that's going on. We also have some work on 17 southbound, which some folks may have seen already. As many of you probably know, the road is in need of some rehabilitation. So we started a project from I-40 to basically the county line where the interstate drops off the rim there. It's about 30 miles of interstate just on the southbound side, 60 lane miles. We're going in and we're going to rehabilitate and reconstruct large portions of the roadway. So we've got about 10 miles on the travel lane, the right lane that we're reconstructing, and about half mile to a mile on the passing lane that we're reconstructing just due to the soils and the water and, you know, the constant heavy truck traffic and, you know, degradation over the years. So we're going to be working on that for this year, next year, and into 24, just because of the scope and scale of the work and the timeframes associated with paving and, you know, other work that has to be done and when that can and can't be done due to temperatures and weather limitations. We're also going to be working on guardrails and barriers throughout the project and rehabilitating some of the ramps that didn't get redone with the northbound project a couple of years back. And then finally, we're going to be putting a new riding surface on that, a new final riding surface, a friction course for everybody to provide a smoother, better facility. So again, we're looking to be done with all that in late 24. In the interim, we're going to be having single lane closures throughout. If you've driven through there, you've noticed that we've got, you know, maybe 2 miles of lane closure where they're doing reconstruction right now. And we have to have barrier up because we're going down 16 plus inches. And then we've got a couple miles open to allow people to kind of try and pass. And, you know, if you have slow vehicles in front of you, to get around those. And so we've got that scattered out throughout the work zone to try and maintain as much work as possible and as much efficiency as possible while still keeping traffic moving as efficiently as we can. So some of this I've already talked about, but generally what to expect during construction. Again, single lane closures, we'll have the barrier up. Right now it's in the left lane. We'll be switching that in the near future here to the right lane. And then traffic will be on good portions of new pavement, you know, a couple mile stretches when you're in the left lane while they reconstruct in the right lane. And we'll be kind of flipping that back and forth for the next couple of years. And then into 24, when we do the final riding surface, there'll be reduced speed limits. Expect delays. Nothing I can do about that, especially on Sunday evenings when everybody's traveling back to Phoenix. But, you know, plan ahead, make sure you've got water and all the necessities with you. And preferably don't, unless you live locally, plan on using 89A as a detour. Obviously, we've got work going on there too, and it's got less capacity than I-17. So if we can avoid that, we certainly would like to. That's really about all for I-17. Got some upcoming projects over the next couple of years. In Cottonwood, we're going to be doing some pavement rehabilitation through the town there. On SR 89A, we're working on developing those plans right now and looking to advertise that for construction toward the end of the year here for construction in the spring of 2023. Got a project for the city of Cottonwood that we'll be administering on the blowout wash bridge. That project has actually been awarded to a contractor. We're just in the process right now of procuring materials and approving submittals and things like that, and hoping to get started in the next couple months here. Cornville Road, some shoulder widening and some other minor improvements along there that we're working on the final design for right now. Anticipate, again, probably getting that advertised sometime toward the end of the year here and starting that work in the spring of 23. The I-17-179 bridge needs some rehabilitation, so that project is programmed in our 5-year program. We haven't started anything on that one just yet, but we will in the next, I don't know, few months or so. Start design on that and look to get that advertised probably in late 2024 for construction in 25. And then on I-17 at the airport road, that bridge, if anybody's driven on that lately, is in need of repair. And we actually determined that it needed to be replaced in whole. So we're working through the design process on that right now. Looking to probably get that one advertised for construction late next year for construction in 24. Relatively minimal impacts on that one, I think, as far as interstate traffic goes. There's be some overnight closures and traffic on the ramps, but that one shouldn't be too impactful. And then we've got some pavement preservation coming up on State Route 64 from I-40 to Pipeline Road, which is, I think, about 18 miles, give or take. And that's planned for the spring of 25 as well. So a lot of pavement rehabilitation in the works, trying to maintain our roadways again. That 2,800 miles that we have takes a lot of time, effort, and dedication on part of our staff. So that's all I really have. Projects that we have are available online for your information. You can go there and look at what closures we have, whatever other information, detours and things like that. Our community relations folks are keeping those updated regularly. So feel free to jot those down if you'd like. Go to our website, azdot.gov. You can look up the projects, the North Central District, and find any information that you need. And that is it. So any questions?
I don't need that. How does the fiber optic cable fit into this?
I'm sorry, the what?
Fiber optic cable, I understand it, put it along I-17.
Yeah, so I didn't mention that one, but yeah, we are installing fiber optic on I-17 from Anthem to Flagstaff right now. That one's nearing completion. We've got all the fiber and conduit and pull boxes and node buildings and stuff installed right now in our section, which runs from McGuireville, the rest area there, roughly to I-40. We're just waiting on some materials to be procured. Obviously, with COVID and the supply chain issues we've had, we haven't been able to procure things as quickly as we would like. So we're waiting on a few more materials to come in, and we anticipate having that done hopefully October or so this year. Most of that, what we're putting in right now, is for our ITS use, like the overhead message boards and things like that ADOT has. But then the rest of those will be available through our fiber office for lease by other providers if they decide to go that route.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is ADOT involved in contracting out with a lot of underpass?
That is not an ADOT project. That is through the city of Sedona. And we are working with Sedona as a stakeholder. That is within the ADOT right of way. So they're working with us closely on an encroachment permit, but that will go through the city. They will advertise that for construction and administer that.
What's the projection for how long at the north end, the one lane is going to, when is that going to open up?
Most likely that will go through late October this year. Just again, the narrowness in that corridor and the amount of work that they're trying to accomplish with traffic and getting all their materials and supplies in there just complicates things. So they're working on the first half of the bridge right now. And that was one thing I should have mentioned earlier, but we expect to have some of those overnight closures in the coming weeks here so that they can pour that first half of the bridge deck. And once that's completed and cured in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, they can start switching traffic over to the new side and then demoing the other side and start working on that. And again, anticipate that probably lasting through late October at the moment.
And then back to 2 lanes.
Yes, after that. Yeah, correct.
A quick question. I've been curious on Interstate 17 that the speed limit in some places is 75 miles an hour. And with a road with a lot of curves and bends, I was curious, how does it maintain such a high speed qualification?
So I can get back to you on a more detailed answer if you like, but in general, state law prescribes that we sign things for the 85th percentile. So what 85% of the public is driving is where we try and post a speed limit by statute. It's also designed for those particular speeds. So based on AASHTO design guidelines, they prescribe certain criteria for curvature and super elevation, which is how the road tilts one direction to the other. And so it's designed for those speeds. Does that answer what you're asking?
Sort of, thank you.
You're welcome.
It also sounded like the south end is going to go to 1 lane.
Of I-17?
No, sorry, A9A.
Oh, it is. Yes, correct. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. So again, that work we're looking at sometime between mid-May and late July for the blasting, which would be that 5-day closure. And then outside of that, we'll have single lane closures during the daytime with flaggers flagging traffic through. It'll be a relatively short work zone just in that area where where we're doing the blasting and then the rock bolting. I don't know exactly how long it'll be. I would expect it to be a couple months, but it may be much shorter than that, just depending on how much production the contractor can get.
That's not till the middle
That's correct.
Well, help me welcome.
Thank you.
Brendan. And next we have Ed Rose, General Manager with the Sedona Oak Creek Airport Authority. Please help me welcome Ed.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Michelle, for the invitation to speak today. Appreciate it. And for SPAC for hosting the event today. I want to comment on all the work that was just explained to us by the ADOT rep. If any of that traffic pisses you all off, you can always fly into the airport and overfly all of that. First, today we're going to focus on aircraft noise. Let's make some noise. No, let's mitigate some noise is where we're coming from. Let's start with the airport's master record. This is all the airport's information that is maintained by Washington, D.C. in the FAA offices. It's kind of like the birth certificate of the airport. But right in our master record, we note twice that Sedona is a noise-sensitive area to avoid scenic flights below 6,500 feet, and that's about the altitude that the tour operators are working at today. And no touch-and-go landings because we're, again, noise-sensitive. The touch-and-go is just when somebody comes in, their main wheels touch the runway and they lift off again. And that creates a power need situation, and that power need creates noise. So how do we mitigate? I just turned something off. Land use planning. First of all, it's up to the community to thoughtfully plan for properties in the vicinity of the airport. Appropriate planning reduces noise impacts to residential occupancies, and by locating low occupancy commercial businesses in sensitive areas, reduce the noise impact. The FAA's minimum criteria for addressing noise is 65 decibels. It's a day-night averaging of noise. So the noise threshold and its goal is reducing the number of people exposed to significant aircraft noise. What kind of noise is there out there? I just did a little comparative here. Who's been to a rock concert lately? Or experienced your neighbor using a power mower? Or motorcycles along your street, along the 89 corridor, 179 corridor. A car wash at 89 decibels. Your blender at home, 88. We're going down, by the way. Your garbage disposal is a little bit less noisy. Your vacuum cleaner, although mine is awfully noisy, and I think it's louder than 69 decibels. It's still more than the noise contours of the Sedona airport. The 65 decibel noise levels don't leave the mesa, according to the 2017 master plan. What other tools do we have in our manager's toolbox? We've got the residential seller's property disclosure statement. Now, probably most of you have purchased property in your lifetime, some here in Arizona. One of the Arizona realtors' requirements are that the disclosure statement be offered by the seller to the buyer. In that disclosure statement, it says, are you near a water treatment plant, et cetera. But line 202 asks specifically if you're aware the property is subject to any of the following. 1, airport noise, airplane noise. And then a few lines down from that, are you aware the property is located in the vicinity of a public use airport? Now, my experience has been that most folks don't look at the disclosure statement. They're happy to get into the new home. They're happy to sign off on whatever it takes, paperwork-wise, to do that. And then they find out afterwards that they're in the proximity of an airport, and they're not pleased about it. There's nothing I can do at that point other than point to this disclosure statement and say you bought it. I'll be happy to work with you to mitigate other noise events. Next, we've got. Okay. Next, we've produced this
The
video.
Aviation Safety Advisory Group of Arizona is proud to present an airport safety video on operating in the Sedona Airport.
Welcome to Sedona Airport.
Each airport in the National Airspace System has unique characteristics which can be challenging, especially for the first-time user. Sedona is a great airport and a great destination in Arizona. So let's have a look at the Sedona Airport from the flight deck. Sedona is a small, non-towered general aviation airport located approximately 18 nautical miles southwest of Flagstaff, 33 nautical miles northeast of Prescott, and 85 nautical miles north of Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. The Sedona Airport, also sometimes referred to as the aircraft carrier, is located on top of a 500-foot mesa at an elevation of 4,831 feet and is surrounded by the town of Sedona. There are beautiful but steep canyon cliffs to the east, north, and west, which vary in elevation from 6,800 feet to 7,200 feet. The entire Sedona area is highly noise sensitive. Approximately 60 aircraft are based on the field, and the airport sees an average of around 96 operations per day, with holidays and weekends being the busiest times. Majority of the airport operations are involving transient aircraft. Sedona does have a high activity of local rotor wing sightseeing tour operators, which normally do not interfere with the established fixed-wing traffic patterns. At the Sedona Airport, some of the transient aircraft are executive jets, and it's not uncommon to hear a Gulfstream entering the pattern. Sightseeing balloon operations are common in the area, but do not operate from the airfield. The Sedona Airport is a favorite destination for pilots throughout the country for a quick getaway or an extended stay. Sedona is the number 2 tourist destination in Arizona, with the top rank being held by, of course, the Grand Canyon. Arizona is known for extensive student pilot training, and Sedona is a popular destination for training flights. With close proximity to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott and a number of other pilot training facilities in the state, it is not uncommon to find student pilots operating in and out of the Sedona Airport. Be advised, touch and goes are not permitted. The Sedona Airport is surrounded by numerous wilderness areas, as shown in the sectional, and pilots should be aware the U.S. Fish, Wildlife, and U.S. Forest Service departments request an altitude of at least 2,000 feet above the surface in these charted spaces. Pilots should strive to maintain these altitudes unless otherwise directed by ATC or lower altitude is required for safety of flight. Please keep in mind the entire Sedona area is noise sensitive. Although Sedona is a non-towered airport, the airport does lie within Class E airspace with one instrument GPS approach to runway 3. Regardless of a VFR or IFR operation, it is good practice to report your position from the airport rather than the fixed names when announcing your location on the Common Traffic Advisory frequency. The single runway at Sedona is 03 and 21. Runway 03 is the preferred or calm wind runway for landing, and 21 is the calm wind runway for takeoffs. Runway elevation varies by 94 feet from one end to the other, resulting in about a 2% slope. Be sure to take this into account when calculating your landing and takeoff distances. When the wind is calm, it is not uncommon to have aircraft landing on runway 3 and departing on runway 21. So be sure to communicate your intentions on CTAF as soon as possible. Landing traffic should be given the right of way. Runway 3 and 21 both call for left standard traffic. When at all possible, plan your pattern entry to avoid overflights of the populated areas to the extent possible, but also realizing safety of flight comes first. If it has been a while since you've operated at a non-towered airport, please reference the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge and the Airman's Information Manual to brush up on proper non-towered pattern procedures and radio communications. Sedona is a high elevation airport and has diverse weather throughout the year. During the summer, temperatures can push density altitude up, which may challenge your aircraft's performance capabilities. Be sure and check your pilot's operating handbook for adequate performance and also proper engine operation at higher elevations. Not all aircraft require leaning, and others do. During the winter months, it's not uncommon for Sedona to see some snow, and if the conditions are right, high accumulations are possible. Although Arizona enjoys abundant sunshine, the local weather is a factor we should consider when flying into Sedona. During the monsoon season, thunderstorm activity will start developing by late morning and early afternoon. The high terrain along the Mogollon Rim offers ideal conditions for lifting moist air into the higher atmosphere, and VFR flight may not be possible. It is best to plan flying activity during the first half of the day in the warmer months. To aid pilots in determining wind direction, there is a segmented circle with a windsock approximately 2/3 of the way up on the east side of runway 3. The segmented circle also depicts the standard left traffic pattern. There are additional windsocks located along the east side of the runway and near the heliports on the south side of the transient ramp. At the terminal building, there is a large flagpole which is easily identified and can aid in determining wind direction. Be advised, it's not uncommon to have the windsocks along the runway show opposing wind directions when the conditions are right. Sedona has a simple single taxiway to access the ramp area from the runway, Taxiway Alpha. After your landing, look for the transient ramp between Alpha 6 and Alpha 5. Sedona can get busy, so when exiting the runway, remember to announce your position and intentions on CTAF to let other pilots in the pattern and on the ground know of your plans. There is adequate parking with tie-downs for most general aviation aircraft just in front of the terminal. We hope this video has given you a good overview of some of the unique features found at the Sedona Airport. For your Sedona checklist, please consider these items. 1. The Sedona Airport is a high elevation field. Please check density altitude. 2. Recommended calm wind runway is 03 for landing and 21 for departures. 3. Remember the runway slope. It does have an impact on your takeoff and landing performance distances. 4. Sedona has diverse weather throughout the year, and expect turbulence even on calm, clear days. 5. Always have options. If things don't look or feel right, go around. Or if the winds for landing conditions are just too much, Cottonwood, Flagstaff, and Prescott are good alternates. 6. Last and not least, enjoy. Sedona offers some great flying, but don't get too distracted with all the beautiful scenery. And please don't forget, be a good neighbor and be noise sensitive.
Now, how many times did we hear noise sensitivity and references to the park areas in relation to the airport? We hit it at least 4 times. But of course, this is a video that is on our website, and the user has to click on it to see it. But moving on, reporting noise. The airport on its website hosts a noise complaint form. It's a job form. When a impacted party completes the form and sends it off, it comes directly to me. It doesn't go to a third party. Michelle, I think that you might get copies of some of those job forms as well. And I investigate each complaint thoroughly and respond to the complaining party about what I've found. But what I need to do that is I need the date, I need the time, and I need your location. What can I do? When I look at the tool that I have, VerTower, that shows me the position of aircraft, their altitude, their speed, their rate of ascent or descent, as well as type, I've got all that information. Now, this is a typical day, and some of you may have seen this before. This is a typical day's traffic at Sedona Airport. Looks like a bowl of spaghetti, doesn't it? So, We can see some north-south lines. We can see some east-west lines. And then we can see all of the spaghetti in the middle, which is really the traffic for Sedona. We can isolate any one of those pieces of spaghetti. And we can see the tail number of the aircraft, its speed, its altitude, its rate of ascent, in this case, its type, what it's squawking, ADSB, and a time date stamp. So there's no running away from the facts if you're an offending operator. What do? We look and see who is it that's flying and causing this problem. Is it law enforcement, or is it a search and rescue effort? Is it Forest Service resources doing animal counts or the like? Is it U.S. military? Are they APS contractors doing low-level power line inspections in your area? And I've worked with McKenzie to get notification of when APS is doing these inspections, so we can communicate that to the city and to the chamber, so that there's an answer at the end and not a, we'll check in on it. Or is it a local tour operator? And I don't think, I think we've put the kibosh on antics of local tour operators through the Fly Friendly agreement. But basically, I'm looking to see, is it too loud? Is it too low? What's its proximity to sites of historic interest, like Tuzigoot, Montezuma's Castle, the Well, and Hanaki and Palatki. Through the information that I find on Vertower, I can discern, are they operating legally? Are they too low? And too low is often a misperception by the observer. If they are operating legally, I get back to the complaining party and tell them so. And I'll tell them what altitude they're operating at and what their rate of ascent or descent was. Just dealing with facts. If they are not acting responsibly or operating responsibly, some of us have seen helicopters, for instance, land on top of some of the rock spires on the east side of town. Just ridiculous actions. And those actions are reported to the Flight Standards District Office for their action. I do not have any authority or any other input when it comes to those operators. Well, we're gonna come back on. Fly Friendly. We have 2 local tour operators based in Sedona, Apex Aviation and Guidance. Both have participated in this voluntary agreement under the leadership of the city of Sedona, the Sedona Chamber of Commerce, and Keep Sedona Beautiful. The airport and Yavapai County support the agreement, and that's about what we can do. We expect the operators who voluntarily agree to this agreement to live up to their word. So a recent revisit of the agreement with the changing of folks in the leadership positions of various organizations. We had a meeting just to reacquaint ourselves with each other, what the goals of the Fly Friendly agreement are, and get some input from the operators. We've also had outreach meetings with the Chapel area residents, as well as Big Park Council, and listening to what impacts they're experiencing from some of the tour operators. And because of those meetings, the tour operators have agreed to, voluntarily agreed to increase their altitudes by 200 feet and make some modest modifications to their routes to avoid impacting the community. This map is an updated map that shows the elevations that the tour operators are expected to achieve in different areas, as well as the shaded areas that indicate the high population density and places to avoid. It is not a no-fly zone. There is no such thing as a no-fly zone unless the president's flying through, and then it's a TFR, temporary flight restriction. So based on conditions of that day, based on other air traffic, operators may deviate from this planned route, but these are for safety reasons. That's what I've got. Questions?
Ed.
Good morning.
I know at times, sometimes planes come in, and although they don't actually touch down, they come really close to touching down. How different is that from touching down? And what is the largest plane that can fly in and out of Sedona?
I haven't seen the largest plane fly in and out of Sedona yet, because if it did and it landed, it wouldn't be taking off. We'd have another new restaurant in the area. But the condition you're describing, Sandy, is what's called a missed approach. And that's an instrument training solution where the planes come in like they're going to land, but then they break it off at the last minute. And that's when we have the powering up and impacts. The largest aircraft that we typically will host is a Global Express or a Gulfstream G5, G6, about once a month. So those impacts aren't really significant, in our opinion. But the facility has to be able to handle that size aircraft, and that's our limitation.
And I've seen some hang gliding in the area lately. Is that of any concern to you?
Yes. Yes, not just hang gliders, but powered parachutes, power sails. We've had a few running through the area this last weekend, as a matter of fact. I got a couple of phone calls. And again, on our website, we have information for power parachutes. Basically, stay away from the airport, stay away from the precipice that the Mogollon Rim represents, and maintain altitude. We also are clear about what the expectations are for the operators. They have to have a light sport aircraft license. They have to be type rated for what they're flying. If they're not, they're going to suffer the consequences. I also note that we worked with fire, police, and the Forest Service to try to identify who that operators were this last weekend. We haven't had much luck. I'm also interested in finding out what is that debris that's over on Cathedral Rock, courthouse. I'm wondering how that got there and what it says on it. But it did not come from the airport. Sir.
So, can you direct us to issues over Forest Service land? We live out off Forest Service, and some planes are certainly under 2,000 feet. I reported one last week. It was like over Windmill Ranch, parallel to 525C. And I don't know, I assume he came from Cottonwood, which I know is out of your purview, but what direction could we take?
Well, that's a really good question. And we've reached out to Cottonwood, the city management and the airport management to join us in the Fly Friendly agreement. That's about all we can do in that regard. The 525 is a training area for Embry-Riddle students and others. So that area between the two airports gets a lot of play. But if you notice something, send me a note, fill out a noise complaint form. I'll be happy to check it out. And if they're flying too low, we'll follow up.
Where would you recommend skydiving in the area?
Skydiving is not on the Sedona Airport. They do have a business over in Cottonwood. I don't know where their jump location is.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, next up is Matt Caldwell, Executive Director with Tread Lightly, speaking on behalf and with the Red Rock OHV conservation crew and all of their great work that they've been making and doing. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Michelle and the Chamber, for this opportunity, and excited to talk with you a little bit about the Red Rocks OHV conservation crew and the work that's been happening. Before I jump into that, though, I wanted to just share a little bit about Tread Lightly, because I understand some people might not understand Tread Lightly and the role that they play. So Michelle referenced earlier, Leave No Trace. Tread Lightly and Leave No Trace were created around the same time, about 37 years ago, to address impacts and challenges related to outdoor recreation. And the easiest way to kind of define the split between the two is Leave No Trace is more non-motorized recreation and Tread Lightly is motorized recreation. So that's kind of the split. They were both part of the Forest Service and operated under the Forest Service. Tread Lightly for about 5 years. And then we were broken off into a 501c3 nonprofit so that we could have the opportunity to better interface with industry and industry partners to continue both our stewardship and educational work that we do. So Tread Lightly is based in Utah. Our offices are based in Utah. But actually last year, because of some of the impacts that we were seeing in different areas, we have started to spread our team across the country. And I've actually relocated here to Arizona late last year, and I'm excited to be part of ROC and the work that's happening there. So this presentation is really a year in review of what we shared last week with a select group. And it's really designed to answer two things. Who is ROC, which we've received a lot of questions about that. And what is the work that that ROC's been doing? So we're going to jump right into who is ROC. So ROC really was established just as a group late last year. The chamber was part of that. Local businesses were part of that. Tread Lightly, the Forest Service. And it really was just created as an opportunity to meet. It's not a formal business entity in and of itself. So the really precipice for all of this is that these businesses wanted to address some of the issues and challenges that we were seeing here in the greater Sedona area. And the way to do that was to partner with Tread Lightly and actually take contributions and donations in and then resource those through Tread Lightly to get the work done here on the ground in the area. All contributions from those businesses are voluntary. There's no obligation on any of the businesses that participate to contribute. And there's actually, some outfitters here in the area that are not part of ROC, but we are honored and humbled by the people that are part of that. The other question that we sometimes receive is related to the funding. So the funding that comes to Tread Lightly through the organizations that are part of ROC is all designated funding. So Tread Lightly has two types of funding. We have designated and undesignated. Designated funding has to stay in a specific area. And the commitment of Tread Lightly is all of the funding that is coming from the ROC organization is staying here in the Sedona area to support work that's happening here. So what I'm going to do is jump in again to what has ROC been doing. Some people don't necessarily have visibility to this. A lot of the work is done on the trails in West Sedona. And if you're never out that way, you might not see some of the impact that's happened. So tried to create this in a little bit of a chronological order. Most of this started in October and November of last year and up through the current months. So one of the things that we've really focused on is trail engagement. We know that having people on the trail system from ROC, from Forest Service, et cetera, people tend to act a little bit more responsibly when people are visible out on the trails with them. So we've created the pieces that you see there, tents, et cetera, as well as educational material that is being used particularly on high use weekends. To provide visibility out on the trail systems in West Sedona. These tents are usually manned by people with the ROC organization, and they take the opportunity to interact with people that are out in the trail system and recreating, share that educational message of being respectful and responsible while they're out on the trails. The other thing you're going to see on these slides is just the investment that was made through the ROC organization to secure these materials, the tents, et cetera, that were needed for this. And that will continue through the other pieces that I address here. So one of the biggest projects that we have undertaken is a location out on Diamondback Gulch, which in my mind has unaffectionately become known as the donut hole. It's a place where a lot of rental UTVs, people have been going to do donuts out in the dirt. It causes safety issues, it causes dust issues, it causes damage to the landscape. This was one of the first main projects that ROC identified and wanted to address. As was mentioned in the ADOT presentation, supply chain has been a challenge related to this. So when we made the decision in March to do some initial work, you'll see there was a lot of cedar branch that was brought in there to limit any off-trail travel that was happening in that area, keep people onto the trail systems, and help prevent some of the safety and damage issues that we were seeing. After a lot of work, we were able to secure the poles that were needed to do the worm fencing out at this location. To give you a challenge, 4 months of back orders on those poles. We actually ended up having to go to a sawmill in Texas and buy a 53-foot flatbed of these poles to get them in here to do the project. The positive is we used about half of them, so we have materials for our next project and don't have to wait. Sizable investment in that project, $17,000 of fence post and shipping to get those here. Additionally, we worked with several other groups as we address this situation out there. We know we've got ranchers that have grazing rights out there. We have the balloon companies that are operating out there. How can we provide entrance to that fence, but also accomplish what we're trying to accomplish by keeping people off trail? Great opportunity for volunteer work here, both from the ROC organization, but greatly appreciate Friends of the Forest being part of this as well and jumping in to help with this work. I will say I was out there last week. We were actually in town shooting a video that will be very similar to this presentation. And one of the things that was done, you saw both in March and here, there has been reseeding that has taken place in that area with a mix that was provided from the Forest Service. And we are starting to see new growth out in that area as well, outside of that fencing. So we have also done radio and digital advertising. One of the things that we know we have is people that travel up from the valley and choose Sedona as their option for recreation. So we have used local radio as well as digital advertising in Phoenix to address those people that are making their way up here. Again, the basis of all of this messaging is the basis of the Tread Lightly messaging, which is there is a respectful and responsible way to recreate when it comes to motorized recreation. In this case, the investment here was a split investment. Half of that investment came from the ROC funding, and the other half of that investment came direct from Tread Lightly as an investment into the Sedona community. One of the other projects that was worked on, again, somewhat impacted by supply chain challenges, but some new speed signage that has been placed, particularly on 525. And the speed signs, we've worked very closely with the Forest Service. There's restrictions when working on Forest Service property in terms of what type of signage can be placed. Speed signage has to carry the accompanying signage there that you see, such as, curves, et cetera. It can't just be a speed limit sign on its own. So that work has happened in conjunction with the Forest Service, but this has been placed in multiple areas now out on the trail system in West Sedona. That signage investment was about $2,500 in signage. Another signage project that was done, this is digital speed signage. Again, two different types here, the Your Speed sign, which most of you have probably seen in the past, as well as the more digital moniker that you can see there. There was two of these that were placed during specific The informational sign was placed during high traffic areas. The other two signs now are permanent. And again, a substantial investment to bring those signs into town and make that $11,000 for the Your Speed sign and another $5,600 for the rental of the digital sign. Kind of like was just mentioned with the airport, we've created a flag system that most of the Rock community is participating in, so that when there is concerns or issues and you would like to call and identify those calls can be made. One thing I failed to mention that I will mention, so Rock does have a Facebook page. A lot of this information is contained on there. I would highly suggest that you check that out. I guess the key that would follow the colors of the flags and who those are connected with can be found on that Facebook page. But these are specific to a rental outfitter. You'll see these. I know Sedona ATVs are very visible right from the road. But this allows you to a little bit better identify, is that a rental unit? Is it a private owner? Potentially, if it doesn't have the flag. If we've got concerned, if somebody is acting irresponsibly, who can you reach out to and who can you contact related to that? We're going to continue to update those and make sure that they are fresh for the outfitters and visible for the residents. So this has been called the Ross Project, Becky and Dustin out on the Ranch Loop area. We had an issue. Many of you may have seen the video where we had a couple people in UTVs that left the trail and were doing donuts out there. Becky went and had a conversation with those people, and actually it was a very interesting video, and I think a lot of us learned from it. The phrase that Becky was using in her mind was right of you're off-road. And if you've seen the video, you heard the response from the person that was in the vehicle. He says, I know, that's why I rented this. So one of the things that we have really tried to talk about, and we'll talk about the actual outfitters and how we're working with them, is using the correct language to talk with people when they're recreating. So we want them to stay on trail, which some people might consider off-road. We don't want them to go off trail. This is a great example of a project. When this happened, I was actually here in town. Becky texted myself and Nina Barlow, and we were able to reach back out to her right away and talk through how quickly we could go out there and address this issue and identify this issue. This is another location that I checked on last week when I was here. All of those Carsonites, as well as those cedar branching, is still in place there, and it doesn't appear that we've had any off-trail excursions in that area. So you've probably noticed, if you have been on any of the trails out on the west side of town, these new kiosk structures that are being put up. We received a request from the Forest Service to help with the procurement of some of the materials to produce these. So Rock initially went ahead and funded that need so that those supplies could be purchased. But Tread Lightly has a very close relationship with multiple manufacturers. We made the decision to go to Polaris directly and ask Polaris if they would refund Rock for that purchase of those supplies. And that has been committed to by Polaris. So these new kiosk materials that were purchased, this is funding that's been brought in from outside of the area to support those needs. One slide that's not in here as well, Tread Lightly also has a relationship with Ford through a fund that is called the Bronco Wild Fund. That is Ford's stewardship efforts related to the Bronco brand. And they have provided us funding. You'll start to see some new signage on these kiosks that carries a lot of educational message. And again, that was funding that was brought from outside Sedona to Sedona through Tread Lightly and Ford. So this is one I'm happy to report. When we made this presentation a week ago, this hadn't been done yet. So this is on Diamondback Gulch. I was actually out here Memorial Day weekend, kind of observing, looking at some new areas that we potentially could work on. And the large hill that's out on Diamondback Gulch, one of the things that Tread Lightly teaches is to yield to uphill travel. The reason you yield to uphill travel is because when a person stops on an uphill, the potential for impact is substantial. And I witnessed it firsthand that day. So we very quickly came back that weekend. We worked again with the Forest Service. We've purchased these signs, and these signs have been installed actually this week. So again, another way where we can jump in right away and hopefully help to mitigate impact that's happening on the trails, educate our users a little bit better how to operate. This information was also passed back to the tour and rental companies so that they can make suggestions to their renters as they're out. So one of the questions I frequently get is how much traffic is in Sedona. So this is a step in that process. Again, we've worked with Forest Service to identify the best opportunity in terms of equipment here. This is trail counters that have been purchased. I got a note that they have shipped yesterday, and they will be installed here in the area in specific locations so that we can better understand what is the actual volume of traffic that's happening. This was, again, an investment that Rock made. We feel that it's really important. It helps us to better identify the work that's needed and where the work is needed. One question that came up in the meeting last week is this data. Will the data be available? That's something that I think that we've got the ability to provide. Probably won't be real time because we're limited on the number of license that we have to go in and look at the data. But there is a report that we could print and provide and potentially work with Forest Service or the chamber of where we want to post that and make that visible. So kind of the second to last slide here, but just kind of a total dollar of all of that you have seen. So basically since October, Rock has made just over $73,000 of investment into the greater Sedona area from those funds that are being taken in by the outfitters, both the rental and tour outfitters. The other piece that we do track is hours and the cost of those hours. There's a rate that is provided both by Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service for a value of those volunteer hours that are put in. So total investment of around $85,000 that's been made in the last 10 months here in Sedona. Greatly appreciate the willingness of the tour companies and the rental outfitters that have made that investment here into the community and help to mitigate some of the impact that we're seeing. The last piece that we're going to talk about, I believe it was the very first Rock meeting. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the discussions that we had was where can we really best impact the Forest Service and address some of the issues on the ground. Amy knows this better than a lot. The Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management right now are very challenged from a resource standpoint, particularly with people. So we know that additional people, like I said, even with those tents and that trail engagement is important to have people visible out on the trail systems. So we are in the process of finalizing an agreement with the Forest Service. That agreement's with Tread Lightly, but again, the funding would come through Rock. And that's to provide a $40,000 investment to get 2 GS5 trail crew members on the ground here in the Coconino and the Red Rock Ranger District. We're working through the finalization of that. The goal of the Forest Service is then to apply for RTP funding to continue to extend those positions into the upcoming years. This is kind of the initial investment that would get that piece moving. We feel this is a very important piece, whether it's Rock, it's Tread Lightly, or the Forest Service. There's definitely a challenge there from a resource standpoint. So us being able to provide this funding to the Forest Service should hopefully increase that resource that's there. A lot of information in a very short amount of time, but happy to take any questions.
Morning, Matt. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very informational. One thing that we've heard about a lot here is the dust on the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Is the dust actually killing the trees? Does it get washed off? Has it gotten better? Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. That question was actually raised, as you know, at the last meeting. Right after the last meeting, several of us went out on the trails, and we actually have some pictures that definitely side by side, you can see the difference of the most recent rains and the impact that that's been able to have on the trees, particularly out in the forest. We've known because of the drought that we're in the Southwest that there's challenges. If you drive out towards Boynton Pass, even on the pavement, some of the trees don't look the best. But we're really hoping that the rain that we've seen recently will continue to help that and improve that. I know in several areas that we looked at, it definitely has.
The trail count data that you showed, you talked about it being the trail counters are being delivered, but the data, your slide looked like it might be real. Can you explain?
Yeah, so that slide, that's not real data that was on that slide. That was just a sample off of the website. But once we get those here and get those installed, the data will be available. One question that I'll address since we're on the trail counters is the trail counters have the ability to kind of decipher what type of machine it is based on the weight of that and the size of that machine. So we will be able to get some differentiation of the vehicle and the vehicle use.
Maybe I didn't hear it, but the question was, is the dust killing the trees? And I don't think you really answered that.
I'll be honest, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I'm not, an arborist. So Amy says she'll follow up with that one and answer that question for you.
How many of the tour operators that are in Sedona are participating in this program?
So Barlow Adventures, Pink Jeep, Safari. I'm going to use the blanket of Rainbow, which has multiple brands that they use. Sedona ATV, Red Rocks ATV, Outback ATV, and Vortex, which actually is in Cottonwood, but does use some of the trails on the west side of Sedona for their rental outfitters.
How many? Well, then on the other side, since I'm not remembering that list, how many? Just the number of them that are not participating.
I don't know that there's that many. I think there's maybe one or two.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
The kiosks are really designed for educational components. So you'll see that those carry a lot of, so Tread Lightly has what's called the tread principles. Leave No Trace has the travel guidelines. They're very simple, ours is an acronym related to how to recreate. The other thing that you'll see on there is a mix of different icons as well as copy. One of the things that we've learned in our work, specifically in the last 2 years, is people intake information in different ways. So sometimes it's got to be pictorial in the way they take information in. Sometimes it's heavy copy. So you'll see a lot of kind of similar message. Say if it's a triple panel kiosk, you're going to see similar messaging, but it's just presented in a different way. If you want to talk with me, I know Michelle's shared my email. You're welcome to connect with me.
We have time for just one more question.
So, well, I'm sorry that it's mine, because it's kind of a silly one, but I noticed the Airport Authority's logo is up there, and I noticed you didn't mention any of the air tours. Obviously, they are not OHVs, but I was just curious, is there any reason whatsoever that any of the air tour companies should be participating in this process? I mean, since they're tour operators.
Yeah, great question. We have had both the hot air balloon tour companies that have participated because they do, need the trail access that's out there on the west side of town. We appreciate the Airport Authority. They actually provided us the location for our meeting last week. The piece I didn't mention that I will say is the kind of fly-friendly agreement that was part of the airport has been carried over as well to ROC, specifically to the UTV outfitters. The UTV outfitters that are part of ROC have made agreements related to the number of units that will be sent out, specifically on days where we have rain and trail closures in the area. So the idea there is to lessen the volume and lessen all of them going to the same location on days where we have trail closures. So while not specifically working directly, we are sharing information and ideas back and forth for positive impact.
Thank you, Matt, for all of that great information. Our final presenter today is Amy Tinderholt, District Ranger with the USFS Red Rock Ranger District. Amy?
Good morning. All right, let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to share a few updates with you. We're kind of on the end here in a short timeline so that we can get the kids back in here. I will be around after outside. If anybody has any questions, I'm here for as long as folks need to address anything. So if I miss anything, just catch me outside. So first I want to hit on a restoration project. I'm really happy that Matt was able to present for you. What you'll hear us say a lot is there's rarely anything that gets done in this area without partnerships. This is such an amazing area for partnerships, and it brings resources unlike other areas. So in Oak Creek Canyon, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, National Forest Foundation, Oak Creek Watershed Council, and the Forest Service have been working on restoration. One of the key successes I want to share with you today is the work that's been done on restoring social trails. Social trails are trails that aren't built by the Forest Service. They're just created over time by people passing over the same area to get to a destination. And the creek is a fantastic destination, and it brings a lot of folks that want to get down there. We've inventoried more than 350 individual social trails just in Oak Creek Canyon. Those trails, the negative impact is that they really bring folks in unsafe areas. They also are a key component for adding sediment into the stream. They're usually on steep hills, and what that does is it affects all of our wildlife, the amphibians that need that clean, clear water. So it's really critical that we manage these trails. So how we've been managing them is by either fencing, putting in check dams, or establishing them as key routes. We know that people are going to want to access the creek. So finding that balance between providing some safe access that protects the resources and closing off or protecting those areas where it's having negative impacts is a key balance for us to make. So we've been very lucky to have some great youth crews out last year in the fall and the spring. They have either fenced, rehabilitated, or designated over 150 of those 350 individual trails. So they're making great progress. They're going to be back this fall, continuing to do the work. We're both continuing to do that process of either fencing, rehabilitating, or designating, but we're also monitoring. So a key part of this is, I often say people are like water. It's hard to control them. They're going to go where they want to go. So we have to look at these areas that we've been blocking out and finding out, are we being successful? Did we designate the right trails? Do we need to do something else to help manage folks in the right way? So I just want to add here too, we have lots of trails in this area. There are social trails. They often look just like our regular trails. And just making sure that you're only hiking on those trails that are signed are going to protect, whether it's our riparian or incredibly sensitive soils in our desert areas. So look for those trail signs and only stay on those designated trails. I want to highlight a couple of new ways to explore the forest that have largely been funded by the Great America Outdoors Act over this year. One is Mescal Trailhead. And so this is out on Dry Creek Road. This trailhead accesses not only Mescal Trail and Great Trails, it also accesses Devil's Bridge. It's in a great area for access. Not only can you go and park there, but if you would rather not drive there, park at Posse Grounds and take the new Sedona shuttle. It's for free, and it goes out to Mescal Trailhead. It also goes to Dry Creek Trailhead. So great opportunity there. One that we're incredibly proud of is new improved accessible access at our V-Bar-V heritage site. So these lands have been used for centuries, for millennia. And Hopi, Yavapai, and Apache are just a few of the folks who have been in these areas. If you have not been to the V-Bar-V historic site, you will not only get to see the beautiful V-Bar-V ranch, but you'll see this amazing pictograph wall that has just got amazing artwork that you can contemplate what they mean. You can contemplate the stories that folks have tried to tell there for centuries. And we now have a new accessible way to visit. So if you'll see that picture down on the bottom is an accessible path that gets you right up to the pictograph wall. You can be there, and our Friends of the Forest docents often give interpretive talks there to help tell the history, to help tell the ancestral connections to these lands. And I hope that you'll go and visit if you haven't been to this place before. West Sedona camping. So we've talked about this quite a bit over the last year, and now we make progress. If anybody's been over in West Sedona over the last couple weeks, you're starting to see some things happen out there. So dispersed camping has been increasing, especially over the last about 5 years. And we've really seen the impact in West Sedona. And so here again, we've been trying to figure out how do we find a balance between access for recreation, but also protecting our natural resources. So we will be implementing a camping closure. We already have a camping closure around the Sedona area, so this will extend that camping closure. The area will be closed to camping except for in 8 designated areas where camping will be allowed. Campfires will also be prohibited. It will be propane fires only in these areas. So right now, working with National Forest Foundation, if you head out to the West Sedona area, you'll start to see lots of boulders going up. So we're blocking off some areas where folks have had access. We're also bouldering off those designated camping areas that I talked about, those 8 designated areas where people will be able to camp. We've installed kiosks with information. You'll also start to see some new signage that's designating those camping areas so folks will know where they can go. We expect our closure to be in place for Labor Day weekend. So starting that first weekend in September, camping in West Sedona will be in designated areas only. Greater Sedona Recreation Collaborative. So we have brought together, or these co-conveners have brought together Yavapai County, City of Sedona, Arizona Game and Fish, Arizona State Parks, and the Forest Service, what we're calling the Greater Sedona Recreation Collaborative. The City of Sedona, State Parks, and the Forest Service are funding facilitators for the first year to be largely focused on OHV management. Most of the funding comes in this first year from the City of Sedona and from state parks. So we have selected Southwest Decision Resources as a facilitator. So they are now in place, and we've been starting to have community conversations. Those started with getting communities members together to talk about use on Morgan Road and in the Broken Arrow area a couple weeks ago. And then later this month, we'll be meeting to talk about Bear Mountain Windmill Ranch area. Those conversations will move forward and hopefully lead us into conversations about what do we need to do? What are those things that, whether it's the Forest Service, Department of Game, Yavapai County, what are those solutions that we can come together with to better manage OHV access on the National Forest? and how can we really make some progress going forward. This project right now is funded through June 30th of next year. That does not mean we're going to wait until June 30th to come up with some perfect plan and then implement. Our goal is really kind of throughout this process to start thinking about how we can make change going forward, and how we can make short-term effective change, how we can make long-term planning for the future, for what's going to be sustainable. Trees. So there are a lot of difficult issues, which is the reason why we feel like a collaborative process is our best way to move forward. And a lot of issues that are not just Forest Service, not just related to rock in our businesses, that are really about us coming together to think about how do we deal with this difficult thing. Tree mortality is one of those. So we certainly are seeing tree mortality along roads. We are definitely seeing it in the area of West Sedona where we have concentrated OHV use. What our forest health specialists are telling us is that the primary reason is because of the drought, although it's likely, and given the evidence that's out there, that dust on trees is also affecting that. So it's not only that there's more use, which creates more dust, but there's less rain, so those trees are stressed, less rain to wash off the dust. All of these things kind of come together to increase the issue. So I think this is part of some of those discussions, whether we're talking about tree mortality, whether we're talking about the level of use on roads, the maintenance of our roads. These are all some long-term conversations that we're going to have about how do we manage this not only to address the issues that we're seeing now, but for long-term sustainability. And those are conversations that we all need to be engaged with. And I really think that this group is set up to really be successful. I think that's all I have. Oh, that is all I have for you. So I don't know where we're at for time for a few questions.
Did you say something about forest health specialist?
Correct. Yeah, so we have lots of different specialties in the Forest Service, land management agencies. We have everything from archaeologists to wildlife biologists. Certainly trees is a big part of what we have. So we have forest health specialists who think about insect and disease, drought, the conditions of our trees, not only for wildlife habitat and environmental function, but also for things like merchantability in our areas where we do timber sales and support timber businesses.
Thank you. I've seen on social media some discussion about the Turkey Creek area getting developed with a more extensive trail system. Can you speak to what the plans are for that and like what kind of time frame?
I can. So we are working to finalize our public scoping. And so that's where we will send out an initial project proposal to get feedback from the public. And so right now we're looking at a system of trails from kind of Baldwin Trail along Oak Creek, down to kind of where the state parkland is. And it's a mix of looking at where we do have user-created trails and deciding whether we need to keep those trails or rehab those trails. We want to have a goal of mixed use for equestrian, hiker, and mountain bike in the area, and also mixed difficulty level from very easy trails to more difficult trails. And our concerns so far that we have from resource side are riparian. That's down along Oak Creek is one of our areas of concern, but also soils. So those are some of our most sensitive soils on the district or in that area. So thinking about how can we have trails that are actually sustainable and don't have erosion issues is a big concern. So we hope to have our scoping so that proposal out to the public in either September or October, and that will be 30 days for folks to provide input.
Amy, on the enforcement of the designated camping areas, we know that you have a staffing issue, obviously, in enforcement. Is there a way that that those of us who live out there can participate in a positive, constructive way to let you know if there's things going on that you don't see, or when they happen, we know it's happening. Can we report that anywhere?
It is a really great question. So one of the things that we're working to finalize is a monitoring process for this project as well. So both what's happening within the closure area and what's happening outside. Are we just displacing camping? And part of that we want to incorporate, we know that folks want to be able to share concerns, and we want to be able to help folks have an easy way to, if there's an emergency, call 911. If there's not an emergency, how can we avoid overstressing Yavapai County and get that back to the Forest Service so that we can figure it out. So thank you for highlighting that. I don't have an answer, but I'll work on finding an answer and making sure that that's available and really, really clear on some sort of process. Hopefully it'll be some sort of easy form like the airport has for Fly Friendly.
All right, folks, last but not least, just a quick announcement for anyone who is interested. This is a really amazing event that's coming up here on August 22nd called the Industry Forecast. It's an annual event put on by the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, and they are focusing on the northern Arizona region. So I invite you to check this out. You can register at azlta.com. And like I said, it'll be held at Enchantment, and it'll be at 3 p.m. And I might also ask that you consider joining the AZLTA as one of their board members. I'm proud to share that we will be partnering with them more greatly in the future to provide perhaps some joint partnership benefits. But please check out some of the materials out at the front near the donuts on your way out so you can grab some information and learn a little bit more about them. As promised, we will post this presentation on sedonachamber.com, and you'll have then all the speakers' information should you wish to reach out to them. And without further ado, I will go ahead and close the program. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.